Hello, everyone. So, welcome to this session. It's about splash screen, which is new API or new component added into the Android 12. So, we will talk about this today, like how this will work and what are the advantages and how we can add it into our applications. Before starting with that, I will give you a little bit introduction about myself. My name is Nav. I'm from Montreal, Canada. I'm a Google developer expert for Android, also organizer at GDG-Montreal, and working as a mobile software engineer at Manulife. And apart from that, sometimes I write articles about Android or Kotlin in general. So, like, what is a splash screen API? So, couple of years ago, like Google Star like comes with an idea like let's add a splash screen before like every application gets starts. So they added it and then they took it back and they feel like it's not required or it's not a good experience. Okay, just so what it does is like they took it back and now they come again back with the same option that we can start with adding the API back to the with Android 12. Just a sec, let me share just a single tab for this. So yeah, so with Android 12, there are a lot of changes, a lot of new APIs, a lot of new design in components comes into the Android development, and this is one of them. And this is by default applied to all the applications. So it includes the launch motion from application from starting to your first activity of your application. And rather than using the this API directly, the development Android development team they recommends to use the Compat library, which is also providing support for older versions, and there is a migration guide also. Like if you are targeting Android 11 and you have your own custom splash screen in your applications, like you are loading some kind of data before actually launching the main activity of your application, so there is a migration guide. I will not going through the migration guide in this talk, but I will just give you the overall idea of how this particular API is working and how we can customize the behavior and how this basically working with the direct file. So as I give you the basic idea, this is the screen which is shows like it provides the consistent consistent experience for all the applications. Like if user has 20 more than 25 applications in their app phone, like each application has their different implementation of their when they launch that when the user launches the application. Like they might have their for example splash screen, but some of the applications they don't have and they just launch the main activity. So there is an inconsistency behavior like in terms of the user experience. So the what the Android team tries to achieve here is to provide the better user experience, overall user experience to the end user, so they feel in the same way when they open any application in Android based phone. So application it uses the system's theme properties, and animations are by default added, and we will see in the later if there is any possibilities that we can customize any animations. And it basically took the 1000 milliseconds for the animation by default. And whenever you can customize the behavior of how long you want to show the splash screen on the or to the user. For example, if you are loading some kind of preferences or if you are loading some kind of data which is like must to get started with your application. And the other thing is it will never showing it, the splash screen will not show when the application is started during the whole start. which is like if user just press home button and application goes back to the background, but when user next time open it, it opens from there. It will not show the splash screen. So it's just from when user initially opens your application. So it's basically once when your user opens your application. So this is the sample image. It's from the Android developers official documentation and application, like this, the default splash screen. It contains four major elements. The first one is the application icon, and this icon is basically the logo of your application, but you can customize if you want to show something else. But most of the time, we as a developers or as designers, they try to use the same, like the application logo. The second one is the icon background, which is, if you see in the image, it's highlighted, all the components highlighted with the numbers. The third one is the foreground, that you can also customize everything in this. All the four components will be it can be customized here, and you can customize using the theme properties in your XML based styles. So as we already discussed, like those are the four components, and there is also a default animations. So there are two animations, like when the splash screen shows to the user, the enter animation, and the second one is the exit animation. So the first one is basically when splash screen shows, and it's controlled by the system, so we cannot customize it. And the second one is the exit animation, when splash screen will go away and it it is moving toward the application's activity. For example, if you have main activity, so this an exit animation can be customizable, and you can provide any animation. And but the main thing is here is like it should be between the length of 1,000 milliseconds. And if you try to do more advanced animation, like more than 100 milliseconds, it will not work like perfectly, and it might be cut off. You will see some kind of lags on the UI. So as I told you before, like all the four components of the splash screen can be customizable. So we will see the first thing is the window background. So the background, which is the entire view's background, that can be customized. So if you are not using, like if you are not targeting API 12, and you already have the window background or in your themes specified, then the splash screen will use that property, which is basically targeting the color value. And you can define that, you can override that in your styles. And if you don't have that, it will take the default system window background color and use that for that. And I already explained like where you can customize it, like setting the theme attributes to change its appearance. And if, as I told you, like if you want to keep it on screen for longer periods, these are the things that we can customize. And animation, if we want to dismiss the splash screen. And there is another one component which is not added in the last slide. There is a branding image that you can add to the splash screen, which is shown at the bottom of the screen. So in the middle there is a logo, then at the bottom you can show the image of your like any branding logo if you want to show on the splash screen. So first thing is the how we can change the background color. There is a new property in the themes which is called Windows splash screen background. And if you want to add this property and you are not targeting with Android 12, this will not be resolvable. Like if you are not compiling using the SDK 12, so it will be only available for API 12 or higher, and you need to override resources in your specifically versions. Like if you know like V21, and in this case it will be V31, that kind of structure it will follow. So Windows splash screen background, and you can provide any color if you want to change the background color of your splash screen. The second one is the icon, which is like by default it points to the application's logo. But if you want to change that, this is the property that can be added to the theme. which is called Windows splash screen animated icon, and it will take the drawable. It can be a vector animation also, like if you want to use the animated icon for that, you can also use that here, and it will be automatically animated. You just need to use the vector drawable for that. And third one is the animation duration. This is the default duration, like 1,000 milliseconds, but this is the recommended also. Like you should not try to over or like go beyond this limit. You can like customize it by, maybe you want to do a quick animation less than 1,000 milliseconds. You can do that using the property which is Windows splash screen animation duration, but by default is 1,000. Then if you we want to change the icon's background color, like the if you see in the images I show you, the second component is behind the image, which is the background space of the logo or the icon. This property can be used for that, which is Windows splash screen icon background color, and it takes, you can refer to the color property here, which is like in the resources, like in the colors file you have defined. But if you want, you can also provide the hard coded value for your color property if you want to use that directly. So it can be customizable also to background color of your logos, like the splash screens icon. And this is the component which is not added in the image, which is called a branding logo or the branding image. Like sometimes some clients, or even as a like a freelancers, we want to show some kind of logos into our like the branding image in our applications. So using the Windows Plus branding image, we can provide the drawable, and it will be shown at the bottom of the splash screen when user opens the app. In the middle, there is a logo or the splash screen icon, and at the bottom, this will be used as a like a drawable. You can pass it as a drawable, and it will be shown at the bottom of the screen. And the sixth change that we can do is like if we want to keep screen on longer periods on the for on screen, and by default, whenever the application's first frame is drawn on the screen, display screen goes away. So if we want to keep it for longer period, like if we are loading data or we want to load some kind of default settings, then in that case we can use the on pre-draw listener for our main activity or whichever is your first activity. You can attach the pre-draw listener, and then there you can delay the first frame call to the first draw call to the frame, and then you can wait or loading any data, and whenever everything is ready or set up, you can just from there you can just call the draw, and it will the splash screen will stay longer than the default behavior. So this is the code for the sample code for the pre-draw listener. So if you see on the pre-draw, this is just a sample. I'm using a view model, and there is a property called is ready. And whenever that property gets changed, like whenever this property is true, I will say like remove the pre-draw listener and return true. Returning true means like you are giving a call to the system that like let's draw the first frame, and splash screen goes away. And otherwise in the else bar you just wait. If you just like keep checking the data is loading or something, the setup is not completed yet. So this is the way how we can add the like delay the splash screen on, or like keep splash screen on the screen for longer period of time. And the last thing is the customize the animation for dismissing the splash screen. As I told you earlier, like there are two components. Like if we want to customize that exit animation, like we cannot like customize the entry animation, but exit animation is like in our control, and we can customize it. And let's see a sample how we can do it. So this code is basically in the Kotlin. So here splash screen is not a property. It's basically it's the we can access it using the get splash screen method, which is like from the activity which is provided to the developers to control over the splash screen different kind of behavior. So in this case, it's we are adding the exit animation listener, and If you see here, I have created the, I don't have too much experience with creating custom animations. So this is just a sample animation I took from the Android developers team and just customize it a little bit. So I created the slide up animation so that I want to dismiss my splash screen by going up or going in the y-axis of the screen. And then I set the interpolator and the duration. I set, as I told you, like by default animation duration is like 1000, but here I just set it to like 200. And and then the main thing is here, like whenever you want to customize the behavior of your splash screen, like the exit animation, you need to make sure that you call the do on end. Like whenever that animation is finished, you need to make sure that the splash screen view is removed, because otherwise it will not be working as expected and it will might stay on screen. So splash screen view also is like a property that like this is the view that we get access when we added the exit animation listener. If you see the very first line, so it gives us that view, and we need to remove it manually when our animation is finished. So if you see, I called slide up and then do on end, and at the end we need to run this animation manually, which is like a last call, which is slide up, the start. So yeah, that's the basics of, like the basics of what is the splash screen API and how we can add it and how we can customize the different properties of this. And as it's also like, as Android developers, we all know, like we are not targeting Android 12, just Android 12, because there are older APIs, like since some of the applications targeting API 21, 23 kind of things. So for that, there is a migration guide. And if you follow these references, resources here, you can check their guide also to how you can use a single splash screen for all the versions of Android, and by removing your custom splash screen from your application and just using the standard application to provide better UX. I also written an article about this splash screen API, which is the very first link in this references. You can also check that if you want, and also GitHub sample code is also attached to that article, and you can play with that. It's free, like it publicly available on the GitHub. So that's all about this small talk, and feel free to ask any questions if you have in the QA tab. Thanks for your time. I will start sharing.